Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So I always like starting with this. What is your sober date?
It's August 8th of last year.
Of 2023 or
Mhm.
2022?
2023. Yeah, so it's
So,
I was going to check how many like exactly days it's been. But it's been like 5 months and some change, like coming up on 6 months.
so what was going on for you like August 7th of this past year?
Well, I was drinking. um I yeah, I had just August 7th specifically to answer that question. I had reconnected with a friend that I had, worked with when I was in my young 20s. I'm in my 30s now. And we just had so many. We just had a million too many. And that amount of drinking did not happen for me all of the time. Like that was a lot. Just like, you know, in and out like blackouts kind of thing. And but I kind of like snapped to in the evening, and I just like halted after, we'd gone out, and we kind of like he drove me back home, and I was sort of just like just ended the evening and ended our hangs early because I was just like so frustrated with myself, even with my drunkenness. I was just like some part of me was I was like exercising that part of my brain, just some amount of mindfulness. And it's like when you practice something so much, I feel like that muscle is there even when we're totally inebriated, you
So
know?
is this your first time getting sober?
Yeah, I have never done it with, well, I mean, I maybe did it for like 3 or 4 months when I started taking a medication, and I think that was in 2016. Because I've thought about this a little bit. And yeah, and I started a new medication. I'd never been on medication before, and so I wanted to like actually respect the what it's a basically don't drink, or if you do it's gonna suck, and indeed it did. So I didn't drink for like months and months, and I think the time I drank again, but it wasn't sort of like one of those like, oh, I'm in trouble, I need to slow down my drinking. It was just sort of I'd grown up around people who drank taking medication for different mood, uh just not disorders, but you know what I mean, just like depression, things like that. And the I got a notification, and mixing them, I could I learned from experience was bad, and so I didn't want to do that.
So
um
so where did you grow up?
like physical, where did Oregon, and
Or
I'm in Oregon now. Yeah,
you're where?
in Oregon. I have
Okay.
6 drinks. I don't have the 3 drink to like make me an actual beverage goblin. I need my water, but
No, it's okay. I've been sober 4 years in February, so we still have like wine glasses and shit like that.
oh yeah.
So
Well, I has a little chip in it, and I used to work at a brewery. Well, right before they became a brewery, it was a tap house then. Had a little chip in it, so it wasn't safe to use anymore. So they let us take the funky ones home. So I have fond feelings, and I also just love a goblet.
yeah,
Love
Oregon's big for glass blowing.
it is. I have dated a glass blower. That's happened.
One of
Not a
my
lot.
best friends is a glass blower,
Nice.
and I know that she went out to Oregon like for some kind of conference uh,
Yeah.
a year or two ago. So that's why the only reason I knew that.
Very cool.
Because I'm from Pennsylvania, she's from
Oh,
Jersey, and she went all the way out there. Why do I have an accent?
no, just because you're asking me, like where you from, all this stuff, and I want to
Uh, yeah,
also know.
I'm from South Jersey, right outside of Philly.
Cool.
Um, that's where I grew up. Right now, I live about 2.5 hours, like in Pennsylvania, away from where I grew up. I
Okay.
wanted to like get away from people, persons, things when I got
Hmm.
sober
Yeah.
because I was driving from Central PA an hour and a half to Jersey to get pills like almost
Yeah.
every day
Oh,
for
yeah.
like 2 years.
And not only is that money for pills, it's like gas money too.
Well,
It's like,
I used my business card for gas, and so like that I couldn't use for buying drugs.
hmm
So I used my
you're like,
business
"Yeah,
card
I
for
need to
gas.
keep me going. This is for business."
Yeah.
This is reasons. That's a write-off.
Yep. Exactly. That's the way I
The
thought about it.
tricks that we do to like make things work out is fun.
Yep.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
so you
30.
grew up now, when did you first discover alcohol?
Um, when was it? Like, was it eighth grade? I think maybe eighth grade or freshman year was the first time I drank and like got drunk. And I don't even, because I didn't really play around with it. I wasn't really, my parents drank. And so, like so many people who are in our situation, my parents drank and I had a pretty big distaste for it. So I would do it now and then. And I would definitely hang around people who drank and smoked. And I personally don't have big, strong, grumpy feelings towards substances. And I completely understand those that do. So I feel very neutrally about how people feel about, drugs and drinking. But um, yeah, I was pretty much like didn't really drink no on a regular basis until I was 21. Like I waited till it was legal in my state.
Oh, okay. So you weren't really like a big drinker in high school or
Oh
anything?
my God, no, I wasn't. I was specifically, and that was the whole thing. Like I didn't feel like I had close friends throughout high school. I had one close guy friend, and I had a couple groups of people that I was pretty close with, but the kind of cooler group, I felt they knew that I didn't really party, and so they wouldn't invite me to parties. And just like, us as adults know, that's like that easy way to get close to people. It's because I feel like, especially in high school, it's like you put yourself through these like micro traumas, and it's like, oh my gosh, where's so and so? Oh, they ran off, and it's like, oh, we gotta go track them down, and it's like all these
Yeah.
adventures that are really bonding. And then I would completely miss out on those things. And so these like I said, these tiny little dramas and adventures that people would go through at parties, and dramas that happen, that bond people together, I missed out on. I think it's in part because I was dating somebody all throughout from eighth grade, a little bit past high school. And that person, I think, was a jealous person at the time, as many young people are. And so he didn't like me going to parties. And so inadvertently, that kind of like saved me from shenanigans. However, I think it's good to kind of get those wiggles out when you're young, because then you're not discovering them like I did at like 30.
Yeah.
Left a longer relationship and I kind of like exploded onto the scene, not having ever partied a bunch. So,
Now you said your parents drank.
yes.
Are they still together?
So my parents were older when they had me. I have a bunch of siblings. My mom is currently 73. And yeah, and my dad has passed. And so he passed away a year before COVID, which I'm kind of grateful for him. He had Alzheimer's, and that would have just been
Oh, yeah.
than the world was as it was before. So they were still together to answer your question. Yeah,
So
they
you're
stayed.
the youngest of how many?
Um, I haven't met a couple of my siblings, that's why I have to like count in my head. My parents had kids before they met each other, and those kids were, some of them were in their 20s by the time I was born, and
Oh,
there
wow.
some of my dad's kids until later in life chose not to have like contact with him. He was a very sweet person to me, and by the time like I met him, but he didn't stick with his responsibilities when he was like a younger gentleman. So I understand their decision.
Yeah, that
My
makes sense.
right, yeah, it's just like, oh, tight, have fun with your new family. And unfortunately, I was part of like new family. But yeah, so I have like five brothers, two sisters, and my closest sibling in age is 16 years older than me.
Wow, that's substantial.
The eyebrow raises on here, and you're like, whoa. Yeah, it's almost more like having like young, cool aunts and uncles.
Yeah, my wife is the youngest where had different like the mom had different kids,
Hmm.
different people, and like her sister is 10, 12 years older than her or something like that.
How's their dynamic? Like, are they close? If that's
They're
okay to ask.
they're close. Yeah, they
Cool.
are. They've always been close.
Mhm.
So they have the same mom.
Hmm.
and she lived there with her mom, so they were close. They're close now,
Yeah.
but you know how it when they first like started. I would say she was a teenager, my wife, when they got close,
Yeah.
or
So
so it
that
took
means
a little
her older
bit.
in her 20s, kind of figuring stuff out.
Yeah, my
My-
brother and I didn't like become close until we were in our 20s.
Yeah.
And we're only 3 years apart in age,
Yeah.
and now we're best friends.
That's
You know what
cool.
I mean?
Like 3 years apart might be a tough spread for like when you're younger,
He
you
was
know.
like a freshman in high school when I was a senior, so I didn't want to be like, you know, a
You're like,
dork and talk to a freshman.
yeah.
But now I just hung up with him. We FaceTime all the time because he lives where I grew up. So he has a little girl, so we're always on FaceTime.
Did you say he has 8 little girls?
No, no, a little girl.
Holy
Sorry,
shit.
I
Not
talk fast.
a lot of just one gender. Just cranking them out.
Yeah,
And some
eight
people
little girls running around. That'd be wild. Can't even imagine.
FaceTiming, it's mostly screaming. It's mostly screaming in the background. Just
Yeah. Well, he has a 2-year-old and she does enough running around. I can't imagine eight of her.
yeah, my brother, I talk to one of my brothers frequently. And when my nephew was younger, he would just hand the phone to my nephew, and I was like, and I, because I love my nephew, but he would just, when he would just like run through the house like this, and I'm like, okay, 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 Patrick, hold on, bud. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. It's just like, whoa. So yeah,
um, so
I love this timing
you
with
grew
people.
up basically an only child.
Exactly. I was just talking with a friend about this. It's so strange to have all these siblings, but still have sort of the mannerisms of an only child, in that experience.
Now, what do you mean by mannerisms? What makes
Oh,
you like an only child in your mind?
um, I'm sure there's going to be tons of things that I miss, but like one of the things is being pretty okay with solo time, being pretty independent. Um, a lot of times, at least for me, probably something that added to like having a harder time being vulnerable with people, and I mean like actually vulnerable. Like it's fine, I will tell what seem like vulnerable stories. This isn't on purpose, but of like mental health stuff or things that I've gone through to people, but those are like in the box of safe things that I've already processed. But as far as going to people when I'm currently going through something and need help, that's not something I did until like, I don't know, 5 years ago. you know, Telling people, I'll be like, oh yeah, I was going through this like, last like 6 months ago. My friends were like, oh my God, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't want to tell you my life was a shit show. Like at the
Yeah.
time, I wanted to wait till I sorted it out. I also think that's something to do with having to parent yourself as a young one of people whose parents drank. You kind of learn, you have to like learn how to self-soothe because you learn that like the emotions aren't the same over there in the parental unit. It's not even keel. You kind of like, at least in I'll just speak for myself. Like you never really know what you're gonna get. I'll go home and be like, okay, what's gonna be like? Not everybody is like this when they drink, but one of my parental units was very like emotionally volatile, and then the other was just like, I love you drunk. So,
What do you mean by emotionally volatile?
oh, just like mercurial, like up and down. You didn't really, literally, like someday you come home, and not even always when they were currently drunk, but because of the kind of roller coaster that our brains go on when they're trying to recalibrate after drinking, like, and then also dealing with like mental health stuff, just all these things stacked on top of one another. Sometimes they'd be happy, sometimes they'd be a big storm cloud, and whether they meant to or not, probably not, they were just, that would affect everybody in the house. Like, oh,
That
they're
makes
mad,
sense.
time to leave them alone, and everybody just knew that intrinsically without like, and it's not something you talked about, you didn't ask them what was wrong, you just let them be, otherwise like you're gonna get snapped at. And so that doesn't exactly create like a safe environment for like, hey, it's okay to tell people about your struggles, because it's,
Yeah.
it just doesn't teach you right off the bat that it's like, because your parents are supposed to be the people that you can go to and be like, hey, and I'm not saying like I could never confide in them, because they were very proud of me, and they would really bolster my like academic success. And so I think I like definitely threw myself into school because of that, and also because it was the only structure I really had. Like, because it was constant. It was a constant where at home it wasn't an emotional constant. School, I knew what to expect, right? And I found some success there academically. So I gravitated towards that. And I also think that's another reason I didn't want to get in trouble and like go drink and stuff, because I was like, man, you're just like, I just early on, I was just like, man, you're just making your life harder. And I also didn't like getting in trouble. Um, and just with that coupled with seeing what alcohol does to people, like I was literally kind of disgusted with it because I would see, parents drinking and just them fade. You know what I mean? Like their actual real, and get that. I'm seeing this through like really critical, like little me eyes. I don't look at people and think this now, but this like they just become sloppy, and then I would just be so bitter about it because I was always like, what if something happens to me? We lived way out in the country. I was like, what if something happens to me? Like, you know what I mean? So I stayed away until I was 21, and then I was like, woo. So,
So, when you were 21, was it like your 21st birthday that you got drunk again for the first time in a while, or did you
um,
wait when you turned 21?
I think I think I had probably gotten drunk with like my high school boyfriend, but it was very few and far between. Like I had some Mike's Hard probably on my prom night, like a couple. I moved out early. I moved out when I was like 17, I think, into my boyfriend's house, and there were just there were like two people living there, and then people coming and going. Because when you're young and one of your friends has an apartment, people tend to crash.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
that friend at night. I moved out
you were
when I was 20, and nobody else at my friends group had their own place, which meant everybody was always at my apartment.
I was that too. When I broke up with that person, I got my own place. It was this tiny little apartment, but I loved it. And it was like, it made me so happy that people would just come over. I would leave my door unlocked and people would just come over. I'd wake up and be like, hey, like there's somebody on my couch that couldn't make it home. But I would say, so that first place I lived, it would be like this game. They'd always try to get me to smoke like weed. And they'd always try to get me like, come on. I'm like, no. So I feel like just being ornery also kept me sober.
Yeah, and that's surprising because Oregon is so like such a smoke state.
It is.
It's such a
I would
pro
say
cannabis
so much
state.
changed in so much has changed in the last 20 years, and also so much has changed inside of me. So that harkening back to when I was like, I don't like to get in trouble, that means like that was illegal at the time. And I didn't want to do that because I was scared of getting in trouble.
Aren't mushrooms legal now too in Oregon?
I think so. I think that they are.
I
I
think they
think,
were one of the first states to
yeah,
pass mushrooms. I can't think of the technical
it's
name. Psilocybin or something like that.
psilocybin. Yeah.
Yep.
I
And
for the first time this last year, 2023, and I'm 30 now. I was 35. I just had my birthday, but
happy birthday.
hey. But yeah, and so I waited. It's always funny. People would always treat me, they'd be talking about mushrooms, and they're like, right? And I'm like, I think I'm flattered that you seem like I do. They're like, you're just so chill, and it's Oregon. But yeah, I was like, nope. Like I didn't do anything besides weed until I was 30, and then I sampled some party items. So
So wait, we skipped over your 20s.
we
You turned
we did.
21.
No, let's just skip it. No, I'm just
You turned 21 and
kidding.
you're already living on your own.
Oh yeah, so I will say, so I dated, talking about like long-term relationships. I had about, maybe 6 or 8 months in between long-term partners. I dated around in the interim, but when I was 20, I started dating somebody, and we dated for like 9, 10 years. Yeah.
That's quite some time to be just dating somebody.
Oh yeah, I mean we got engaged maybe midway through, but it's also still a long time to be engaged, and we're no longer together. There's a reason for that.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's a long time to be just engaged and
Yeah.
not actually tie the knot. But it's better
Yeah.
that you didn't if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I feel like I knew a lot early on, and I did he was a really sweet person, very like even keel. But I think I knew pretty early on. But it's kind of hard for me to end a relationship when nobody's like a monster. Nobody's terrible. Nobody's hurt like physically or emotionally like hurting anybody. It's just not a good match. For me, he was just pretty distant. He had a really hard job. Um, Worked in warehousing, and now I do. And I wonder if part of that is me proving to myself you can do this hard work, you can pull your own weight, and also have a life. And I don't know. I just feel like those two things must be connected somehow. But anyway, he was pretty distant. And I did try to end the relationship like midway through, and he like really begged and pleaded for me to come back. I think we had been together like 6 years, and I was so I was so hurt and so done that I felt very frustrated that he only just then was like discovering this fire to try to like keep me. I was wishing that that was like dispersed throughout the whole relationship, but I just based on trust and like respect for what we had built together, I was like, okay, I'll come back and we'll give it a try. And he was so present, and it was at that time he asked me to marry him, like maybe a year later or so. And we coasted on that for a while, but he kind of went back to being very just like a satellite of a person, just barely just there, you know. So, my 20s was so I was dating that person. He had a 2-year-old daughter when I met him. So he had a daughter very young. And really, like a year or two into our relationship, he wanted to build a house. And he was like, basically, do you want to do this with me? And I said, yeah. So things really took off. Um, he had a very sweet, stable, like loving family. There wasn't like substance abuse in his family. And so it was nice, but it was also very foreign to me. And I felt sort of, I don't know, like, and I'm also there's like much, it made me feel like I was too much because he's a very like chill person. And that was just like another unfortunate part of our dynamic. I always felt like too colorful, too bright. Like you can't see my room, but it's very like lively. And so I just maybe sort of felt embarrassed about who I was around his family, but they are so sweet. Um, but I feel like having that dynamic kept our lives very chill. But gradually I started drinking more and more. And I think it was from like just sadness, like loneliness and stuff. Um,
Yeah, I can see that. I mean,
yeah.
I was curious as to you move out of there
hmm
and move on your own, and now you really discover like drinking and smoking like as a single person.
Oh, so you're talking about like when I left that
Yeah.
basically it was basically like marriage, honestly. Like we had a house, we had, she was my stepdaughter. She's 18 now, we still talk, which is really cool. We actually just talked about you know alcohol dynamics. She's going to start going to college and parties and stuff like that. I was so honored that she felt comfortable talking to me about that. But I will say, like, in my early 20s, I knew that I was a little too drawn to drinking. I just knew, I just felt it. And I was so, like, I'm grateful for the awareness that I had, but also I used to say I was jealous of people who could just drink and enjoy it. Because I always would wake up with this guilt and, like, shame feeling a lot of the time, even if nothing went wrong or I didn't do anything bad. You know what I mean? Did you ever
Yeah.
experience that? Just like, it felt like I was carrying around a secret. When I would know that I was drinking too much too often, it's like I had a secret, and the secret was I'm kind of a shitty person sometimes. And
I was that way with pills.
yeah.
Drinking,
And pills
I'm
are so
30.
much more not accepted into society, so that's even more like shame demon I could feel.
Well, yeah, I'm 37 now, and looking back, I started drinking alcoholically when I was 12.
Damn, okay.
So that's just me doing like I started drinking when I was 11. That was the first time I got drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I was 12, I was drinking for a reason to like forget and to numb.
Hmm.
So I was an alcoholic from 12 to 33.
Yeah.
Um, but I discovered pills when I was in my early 20s. And
Oh.
that really, that was like the secret was I wasn't getting them legally either. I was buying them illegally. And I was buying them every single day for
Damn.
a decade.
Like, I think I would always just be so scared that I'm gonna get fucking busted, you know?
Well,
It's
I gravitated towards a crowd of people that were doing pills too, so that
totally.
I was accepted in that little group of people where we would have this like secret. Well, we thought it was a secret,
Yeah,
but
you
parents.
stop doing it, and then it's just like people who are doing coke. It's just like everybody knows. If people know what to look for, everyone knows where to go. Everyone knows where you're going to the bathroom so much.
So that was one of your vices was cocaine.
No, 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 no. I've done it a couple times, and I feel very grateful that I don't feel like a pull to other stuff. I've done it so few times that to me it's still like, ooh, fun, and it's not something I really plan on continuing, especially with how dangerous it is right now. If it's something I wanted to do again, I would get test strips. Like, I'm not gonna die about this.
Yeah,
um,
no, you're absolutely right. Because
like it's super heavy and real, and like I'm gonna, be jokey about stuff, but that's yeah,
a lot of people are overdosing on cocaine because it's laced with fentanyl.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. I will get some fence strips. Eugene, for how because of how legal
Progressive.
or decriminalized things are right now, there's a lot of harm reduction. Well, I don't know. There maybe compared to other states, you will see like place like there's needle exchange programs. That's probably other cities too, but
No, but it's Oregon is definitely more progressive when it comes to being pro. We're just like harm reduction.
yeah, yeah,
Wait, did I meet you in the hams group?
yes.
Okay, so you know, yeah, you are well aware of harm reduction.
For the most part, I really wish I actually looked it up the other day, but I couldn't tell you like the definition of, but I would just say it's very much just the better is better. Any bit less that you're doing to try to mitigate excessive use is better. That's the goal. We're not trying to do black and white here.
And it's also the test strips too are important to have. Um,
And then
and
like
Narcan.
needles, yeah, Narcan. Like what I mean about Eugene being pretty, like I said, I've only ever other place I lived was in Phoenix. I it's a huge city. I'm sure there are places to go, but like if I wanted to today, I'm pretty sure I could go somewhere and get Narcan, get test strips. You know.
Wait, you lived in Phoenix, Arizona too?
Mm-hmm. For 2 years.
Well, what is that after you
I know.
left? I know
Yeah.
I'm lost. I'm like, you were just in Oregon.
Quick timeline just to orient us. So 10-year relationship started, started amping up my drinking, but I mostly did that alone. And then towards the end of our relationship, he was gone physically a lot for work. And that's when he started drinking a lot more too, because so he did industrial insulation. And so if you've ever worked warehouse, it's very work hard, play hard. And I think he avoided that for a long time. But a lot of the guys, when they go out of state, it's like time to fucking party, and he really got caught up in that. Um, and then there's a time we were separated, living in the house together, which is very hard. Don't recommend that. I started to get to know the people in the local small town that I was living in, get involved in that scene, which is like all bartenders. And if you've known any bartenders, they just fucking they party. So I got involved in that, and that really led me into this just like, and of course, like I'm sad my relationship's ending. And even though our relationship was ending, he and I had always been really kind and like taking care of one another. So this was my experience being around people who basically don't know me, aren't really taking care of me as far as like respecting me, or just like they don't know that this isn't my usual. And like it's my job to take care of myself, but I just had an experience. Like, and basically I'm just like I'm telling people things and then they're telling other people, and I hadn't been around people who did that. It's like my friends that I grew up with and my partner, like we kept each other's confidence. So it's a mess, if you're around people who drink all the time and people get in fights because everybody's like misunderstanding each other. You know what I mean? So
So
anyway,
you're drinking amped up towards the end of your relationship, and then you guys broke up and you kind of took off a little bit when it came to drinking.
yeah, yes, and so I moved out. I stayed on a friend's well, I paid to stay on a friend's couch for about what 2 3 months. Finally got my own place in Eugene. I was living in another small town, but I got my own place in Eugene, and it was such a peaceful house. and I was starting to chill out a little bit, but I would binge drink. So I didn't drink every day. Because I was fine at keeping a job and mostly keeping my life and things in order. But I would binge drink on like mostly the weekends or whatever my weekends were working. I worked at a bakery. Um, and but I worked at a bakery later in the day because we did production.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Because I was gonna say bakeries are generally open at
for-
like 3 a.m.
yeah. Yeah, and so because of drinking reasons, I don't know about everybody else, but I didn't totally admit to myself that I mean, I was aware. I was aware that like I'm taking jobs that start later so that this lifestyle could continue. Because I've always been a night owl, but I didn't put enough weight on the reason I'm taking jobs that start at 10 p.m. is because I need to sleep this off. So, yeah, so when I was, let's say, turned 30, got my own, well, not my own place, I had roommates, but like out, like single on my own. Kind of spun out. I started dating one of my roommates actually. Sorry, my door just opened, which I know could be just a terrible proceed with caution type story. We're still friends. We're no longer together, but we proceeded very much with caution. But the first handful of times were like drunken makeouts. But this person has been on and off sober too, and they were the only other person that I've known before who's as aware of their drinking and like, yeah. So that was kind of nice. We would be mindful of drinking together, but then sometimes we would do the binge drink thing together. So that was tough. And then so I lived in that house in Eugene for a couple years, and things were fine. I mostly kind of like chilled out, but in my opinion, I was still drinking, still binging. Um, and then I moved to Arizona for a couple years, initially for a caregiving job. I left that job and I started doing really difficult production work that started at I think 2 p.m. So and then it would end at like 10 or 12 or 1 a.m. And then my crew and I would go out until like 4 a.m. Like, yeah. So that didn't
Yeah,
help.
yeah. I'm sure you're in a new city, so the friends you're making are the ones you're working with.
Oh, exactly. And Arizona is such a different place. I didn't think it was going to be that different. It's really different politically. I
It's
loved
a
a lot.
180-degree difference
Oh
between
my God,
Eugene
I'm just
and
such
being.
this Eugenian bubble of like, progressiveness, and sometimes it's just I don't want to get in the well, I mean we can, but it's also nice to get out and experience other places though.
No,
Um,
I lived in 5 states in
yeah.
my 20s and 30s. I've lived in Jersey, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, North Carolina, and California.
Mm. Well, California is different from the rest, I bet.
Yeah, it's definitely. I went there for rehab.
Okay, okay. So
And then
you
I stayed for sober living and lived there for a few months until I came back for work.
okay.
But yeah, I lived a lot of different places,
Yeah.
and a lot of them I was running away from, my own troubles, thinking that if I'm in a whole new state, I'll be okay. And then the
Mhm.
problem is my head went with
Yeah.
me, and that caused
Yeah,
me
you
to go
you
right
are
down.
wherever you go. You follow yourself. Dang it. Like um one of my siblings did that. He actually found success with that though. I don't know the whole trajectory. Maybe he continued, but I think he fell into the hands of some really good friends that like were on an upward trajectory and they took him with him because he's a very smart dude, but sometimes you just get into stuff early on and it's like I recently read somebody was just like giving themselves a hard time for having, being addicted to something so early. And then they talk about how, they would drink with their parents and their parents gave them pills and other things. And I was like, that feels like very much, if anything can be not our fault, that one feels like really not your fault. Especially when your little brain's still developing and these substances are shaping it. So I give a lot of grace to people who've, I mean, to everybody really, but to people who especially just were in that environment. But yeah,
Why did
so
you move?
yeah,
Why did you move back from Arizona back to Oregon?
well, I wanted to move back like a year in. Um, But it's really funny. Just as I dated somebody there for pretty much the whole time that I was in Arizona. um, I stayed longer because he and I were together, and I didn't, and he didn't want to move to Oregon, and because that's a big move. Um, I just missed my home. My mom was 72. You know what I mean? I wanted to be close to her. Um, I just missed my family. I was really isolated out there. I don't drive. I haven't lost my license, but I never learned to drive. Um, I moved out before I learned how to drive, and my parents had like 1,000 kids. By the time I came along, they're like, "I don't figure it out. I don't know. Like, just fucking can't you just take the truck out back? I don't know." But I was very much still to this day. I'm this to some degree, but I've learned how to do it myself. But like, I needed a push. I needed some guidance, and they, just because they were on stuff that they were dealing with, um, didn't do that. So,
Have you learned to
um,
drive yet?
no, I have been this year. It's been a more of a goal, and because before it was just sort of like, this is scary. I'm not good at this right off the bat, so never doing that. It's like not perfect the first time, not doing that thing, which is just a healthy way to live. Recommend it. Just don't do that. Don't do that. But what's really funny is I got trained on the forklift before, and I drive forklift just fine. So I got my forklift certification before I got my license.
It's probably backwards as to what it usually is.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, but just to keep on the timeline, like, yeah, lived in Arizona for a couple years. I met one really awesome friend though. We just talked for 4 hours on FaceTime. And then I moved back home because I missed home and I missed my really incredible friends. And, I don't have a lot of family here, but I wanted to be close to my mom. Um, but I was working for an app, and I was just got offered a promotion and like a raise. And I've never so clearly had like a fork in the road moment, except for maybe when I left that really long term relationship. Like, oh my God, do I go back? Is that literally moving backwards? Am I just doing this because it's safe and comfy and easy? What, like, but I'd already kind of put things in motion as far as getting the U-Haul, starting the move back to Oregon when I was offered that promotion at my work. So, but I made the choice to come back, and it has been really nice. Yeah, it's been interesting getting sober in Eugene, because Eugene will fucking drink about anything. They'll drink about it being Wednesday. They'll just like, oh, it's raining, like anything.
This podcast is also sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are looking for therapy and not able to get something right away locally, you can do that with them. Within 48 hours, you can find a therapist to get on telehealth with you. I mean, I haven't heard anything but great things from people that have already done it, that watch my show or listen to my show. If you're looking to get 10% off your first month, you can go to betterhelp.com/MJsPNPMCA. That is betterhelp.com/MJsPNPMCA.
And there's a lot of fun events every single day of the week. So
Yeah, I had a bar locally to me, and every Wednesday they had White Trash Wednesday,
nice. See,
and
that's fun.
it was like dollar drinks all night long.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Super
That's
dangerous.
dangerous. That's
Yeah,
so.
they eventually shut down.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. What a shocker there.
And there was fights all the time. I
I
mean,
was gonna say between just like the fights that would happen from dollar beers.
yeah, well, and dollar drinks. Like I was drinking whiskey and Coke,
Oh no.
and I was a
Oh
good
no.
tipper, so they were heavy-handed on my drinks because they knew I was going to leave a good tip.
Yep. Oh
So,
yeah. No, if you're giving me $1 drinks, I'd probably give you yeah, such big tips. And that's the thing is people living in Eugene for so long, living in the same place for so long, and working in the service industry myself, like you tend to get to know service industry people, and then they hook you up.
yep.
And then also being somebody who I feel like only other people who drink say this, but no other people have said that. They're like, I didn't know you were drunk. Like, I had no idea. I would tell people like, yeah, I don't remember the rest of the night. They're like, what? You were like so animated and having these conversations. I was like, good for me. Great. I'm glad she was having a good time because I
Yeah.
don't fucking remember it. So, yeah.
So what about this sobriety? Like, are you going to
Hmm.
meetings? Like, how are you doing this sobriety?
No, I'm not. I'm not opposed, but I've heard people say something like spontaneous sobriety. That's I should once again I should look up the definition of it, but it sounds like it's that. I just was so sick of it and it being myself and my choices.
The
Um,
the cliche is I was sick and tired of being sick and
being
tired.
sick and exactly, literally
That's
just
the cliche.
exhausted up here and exhausted in my body because my job's physically demanding. I will say, even starting in Arizona after that warehouse job where I started at 2 p.m., I I think I was part of the HAMS group at this time. I started doing harm reduction. I looked for jobs that started early in the morning so that I would have some accountability and there would be a reason to go to bed early. And that would mitigate like how much I drank. That was sort of like a moderation tactic that I used. I put myself in situations where I had to be better. And I very grateful that I've always been able to keep a job. The bakery job I had in Eugene, it was like my drinking was affecting it because I was always so tired. And that would affect my fucking cognition, right? Like I was just slow. Everything was slower. Um, so I started taking jobs that started early in the morning and I continued that when I moved back to Oregon. And I very purposefully like wanted to do things with people that wasn't just going to bars. Um, Shoot, what's the last question that what sparked it? Or how have I been doing it? I've been doing it like by myself, but because I knew that the what people call the pink cloud of just like the elation of if you feel excited, not everybody feels excited when they first stop drinking, but I did. I was just I felt fucking like, oh my God, I don't have to drink. I don't have to go through this. For me, it was like a 3-day cycle because I would like, you know, binge. I don't know about 3 day, but it was just like a handful of days cycle. I would binge drink or just drink and feel just not stellar about it. And then if I was hungover, I'd get through that. That probably would take 2 days for my brain to start feeling like back to normal. And then by that time, I'm like, maybe just a little cider. I don't know. Just like, I'm doing so great. Let's have a cider about it. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's been like, oh my God, I'm doing so great and not drinking. Let's have a fucking beer about it.
Yeah, no, you're not the only one.
But
I would do
yeah.
that with pills. Like I haven't done pills in 2 days. I've earned this.
Oh my God, look at me go.
Even though even though those 2 days without pills wasn't for a lack of trying, it
Yeah.
was just because I couldn't find any for 2 days and just had to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
it was never
like,
by choice.
it makes even more sense that you would reward yourself with it that way. So some people sort of warn me like this is gonna wear off, or I heard that in maybe I don't remember what it was like.
My
Someone I heard.
pink cloud lasted about 8 months.
Nice. That's a long ass time. That's longer than I thought. I thought it was gonna last like maybe a couple weeks or a month or so. So I started like arming myself with resources, I guess. Just watching the Hams group more, listening to like I early on I started listening to like the fucking sober podcast or like the first 90 days, and though I didn't totally relate to all of those stories, there were elements in like every single one that I did. And then
You-
I finally
You're
found
like probably and you definitely aren't the first one that was a late bloomer. Like I've called them late bloomers
yeah.
where you don't really drink as a teenager and then you really find alcohol more in your 20s and 30s.
Yes.
So you're definitely not alone. I can tell you that much because I have heard a variation of your story a bunch of times because I've recorded I think 170 episodes or
Nice.
something like that. So I've heard so many different stories that
Yeah.
I can reassure people that, hey, you're not alone because I've talked
Mhm.
to X, Y, and Z, and
Yeah.
they all started when they were late too.
Yeah.
Um, so I totally get that. And at the same time, like I can see why. Are you still on your pink cloud? I
I
see
would
your your hair's pink.
Yeah. Yeah. I would probably say so. I had probably 2 weeks where I don't know what happened. When it was about 2 months into not drinking, and it's like I was smacked with a depression that I haven't felt since I was probably, I want to say like 24. So it's been about 10 years. And that depression last time lasted about 5 years. And so I was really scared. I was really fucking devastated. And I just felt like heartbroken because I was like, God damn it, not this again. And I was also pissed. I was like, okay, I stopped drinking and this happens. That's not fair. That's not what's supposed to happen at all.
Yeah.
But because I was so much more, I was like, I'm a fucking different person this time. I have gone through so much, and I'm um it almost sounds cheesy to like say some of the things I do, and it probably won't to people who are like interested in harm reduction and like making positive changes, but I'm really mindful about like the way I talk to myself and the thought roads that I go down. And so when I was starting to feel this way this time, I told my partner about it, and instead of like, so they would say something to me and I would like get wounded, like I would like, because I would just take it in a self-deprecating way or something like that. And this time I would just pause and be like, hey, when you said this is kind of how I took it and I'm feeling sad about it. And he'd be like, oh my God, no. um and then just telling people anyway off the bat that I was sinking into this was really helpful, because it like took the power away from the thing. But I was so scared that I was going to lose my faculties to depression, because after a while it's like it's very tempting. I don't know if you've ever gone through long stints of, probably, I'm just guessing, if you've had a rendezvous with pills, probably.
Yeah, and I
Advice.
lost a fiance to suicide, so like I was, and I wish I would have thought about going to therapy then, but I didn't. It wasn't even like a part of my thought process. It should have been. I should have went to therapy for it. I'm in therapy now,
Nice.
and I meet once a week with my therapist, and it does amazing things because I used to go to meetings a lot, and meetings helped me on early on.
Yeah.
Like that my pink cloud was in those rooms of AA.
Feeling community is so nice.
Yeah, exactly. I was able to meet people who were sober and meet people like me and had like stories. But now it's more about working because like I still use cannabis in my recovery. And so that's part of harm reduction, right? Is doing that, and watching myself to make sure I don't do it in excess.
Yeah.
But
I
I'm
don't
in
know
therapy now, and that helps the most.
what helps the most. Oh,
Ther-
therapy.
Like
I
my BetterHelp is my sponsor of my show.
Oh, nice.
So I'm all about therapy and people going into therapy and how helpful that can be, especially when we have dark pasts and we had like a bout of addiction in our lives. It's important to talk about that kind of stuff in therapy so it doesn't rear its head around again.
Yeah, because if you're not working to be like self-aware, then that's I think these actions and behaviors just pop up, and you like haven't traced their origin, and so it's sort of like, where's this coming from?
Yep.
But I have been to therapy in the past, and I love it. I would love to go back, even though I'm feeling like pretty sturdy. It could only help.
It's not going to be, that's what I mean. There's no detriment to going through AA. You're going to go there, not AA, I mean therapy.
I know.
I mean, because that it can be detrimental sometimes, but not where you live. On the West Coast, it's more acceptable to use cannabis in your recovery.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying you do.
No, I actually don't. I can't. I could get randos at work, so I don't. I just don't mess with it.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that like it's more acceptable to go to therapy.
It is. Yeah.
And to get some help and reach out, like sobriety. When I went to AA in California, it was very acceptable. Like you can talk about pills in AA.
Oh, California sobriety.
As long as you're there, and you can be Cali sober and go to meetings. But then I moved back to Pennsylvania and I lived in like a conservative area and they weren't as accepting. So I felt like I was I distanced myself
Yeah.
because I didn't feel like getting told you're doing it wrong when I thought I was doing it right.
Yeah. Well, and it's so positive, and I'm guessing probably for you too. Like I feel so positive about what I'm doing. It feels very natural and organic. And what I'm doing would include like, oh, if I didn't have to not smoke for work, I would probably smoke sometimes, maybe do some gummies or something now and then. But like I might take mushrooms randomly and not think about it as long as I don't have anything to do. Or like microdose or something. And that I don't know. I mean, I'm probably pretty sure that other people feel this. There's a feeling that I get when I like something a little too much. And just because I don't feel that way about like, so like I did Molly for the first time when I was like 30. That was fun, but it's not something I'm going to do all the time. And I don't feel incredibly drawn towards it. That doesn't mean that I don't think that I'm just fine to do that whenever, or that eventually, if you do something, if you have enough exposure to addictive substances, you're going to get addicted. So I have a healthy respect for drugs and substances, and I think that they're fun to use, especially mindfully. But I wouldn't say that.
You definitely have the right mindset when it comes to that. Like, you understand yourself at least, and you are self-aware to the point where you can step outside yourself and kind of look at yourself, be like, nope, you're doing that wrong. You're doing this wrong.
Yeah. Oh, it's so strange. I felt like I had two minds, like two selves inside of me, even when I was still drinking. Especially, I mean, for honestly, most of my actually, like my whole drinking experience, but that really like amped up. It's like there was a part of me that was just like waiting and collecting other people's experiences and methods towards sobriety or at least harm reduction. And it's like when that other more logical part of me that was always observing my actions got strong enough, like then they took over and they started like making decisions for me.
I felt like your 20s into your mid 30s was like a roller coaster where slowly going up and you can just, the chains are crinking and you're
Hmm.
slowly getting to the top and then you get whooshed down all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
very much. I've never thought of it that way because I don't tell people this whole story, or at least people who are as experienced listening to these stories. So I love that. I've never gotten feedback about it, but it was exactly like towards the end of it, hanging out with the bartender friends, just you
Yep.
know, because yeah, but
And now you're more even. Now you're just on the part that's a little bit rocky because life is going to be rocky.
yeah,
It's not always going to be, rainbows and, you know what I mean?
yeah,
You're going to have days where you get tested in order to be like, I'm not going to drink over
yeah,
this.
dude. And I had a hard day maybe like a month ago now. And just out of, I don't know, curiosity, I asked myself, like, do I even want to drink? And it was more like a sigh, like, no, because that is no longer, that didn't even sound good anymore because I knew it didn't even, and I was almost like sad about knowing that it wasn't even going to help because it's like, oh, that's not even there anymore. I think I've heard it compared to like, when you're still drinking, you know, you're in this house and the house is like you're drinking, right? Or whatever. There's some sort of allegory there, but and like the house catches fire, it just starts to smoke, and that's your drinking amping up. And then like, okay, you get out of the house and the house is fucking on fire, and that's, you deciding to quit, and then like the fire's been put out, and then deciding to like maybe go drink again is like, do I go back in that house that's like all charred and fucked up? It's like, no, I don't even want to go in the house anymore. God dang it. Like, it's like that. So I just realized that like, no, I mean, and I might sometime in the future. I asked my partner, because they don't really know me as a it's like half and half. We've been together for a year. I think I drank for 5 months the beginning of our relationship. And I was like, how would it feel to you? Just because I'm gonna make my own decisions, but I was curious about what they thought. And I was like, if I like had champagne on New Year's, or if like we had a handful of drinks together on some like anniversary trip or just something. He was like, that sounds like fun, like it sounds nice. And I might do that and I might not. I might, because this feels really nice what I'm doing.
It's
Um,
nice to wake up and not be hungover.
oh my God. Yeah,
It's
dude.
nice to know when I'm actually sick. Like
I
before,
think I had COVID early on, but I wouldn't have known because I was so hungover.
that's my point is you don't know if, and because my withdrawals, I woke up every day like I had the flu.
Yeah.
And
Very
that was what the pills did to me. I
yeah.
woke up every day like I had the flu, and I was never really sick. I was just sick because I was withdrawing.
Yeah.
And until I got pills in my body, then I would feel 100% again and
Yeah.
feel good back to
Because that
normal.
like that's your new equilibrium is like with the pills. Um and I think something that's really helpful because it's funny, not fun, but it's like I knew for such a long time drinking that the emotional roller coaster I was on, like the just chemical roller coaster I was on a weekly basis, being a binge drinker, was affecting my moods. And I think it's really helpful because you see some people get in like the hams group or in chats and stuff. They're like, man, I'm feeling this way, XYZ. Is that a part of going alcohol free? And I think having a really deep understanding of what we're going to be feeling and going through when the alcohol is just like leaving our body and your body's having to realize it's like, oh fuck, I have to start making this stuff myself again. You're not going to dump the happy chemicals into me anymore. And also, I keep hearing this chemical called dynorphin being brought up. It's something that our uh, bodies create to counteract the effect of alcohol so you don't get too fucking happy. It like chills you out. So if you have started moderating your drinking, from my understanding, so like say you have 2 glasses of wine instead of the whole bottle, your brain is still going to dump a whole bottle's worth of dynorphin into your brain to counteract it. And so I think that's why moderating is hard sometimes. And then you're like, what? I'm depressed now. It's because it's making too much of the depressed chemical. And so it's just like, it's just so cool taking that alcohol away and really getting, like you said, learning like, oh, this is what I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, you're actually learning, and I think that the 30s are so important for you to learn yourself because your
Yeah.
20s are more for destruction.
It's the fuck around find out time.
It is.
You
No
just
one's
find
going to
out,
tell you
depending on how much you fuck around.
no one's going to tell you that you're doing it wrong because you're in your head in your 20s, you're doing it exactly the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
And then in your 30s, in my opinion, it's more for like figuring your shit out.
Yeah.
It's finding out for yourself what you're doing wrong or what you're doing right.
Yeah. It's hard because from when I was 22 on, we had a house and we had a little family. And so I had this very, like upper middle class family that my partner's family had, or was. And so I did feel like very much not restrained in a terrible way, but like I felt a pressure to be appropriate. And a part of me knew that I was missing out on these experiences that I thought basically it's just good to get the wiggles out. Age appropriate wiggles need to get out. I don't want to be 50 in the club, just which, actually, whatever, fuck it. Now I don't care. I think people should experience whatever they want to experience. And then, it was just really funny. I always say, like, when I'm 30, I'm back in a house with like 5 other roommates. I just did shit backwards. I had the house in my 20s and then like now I'm back, and at the time when I was all depressed, I would like look around, there's just like Pabst and Doritos around my bed. I'm like, oh cool, nice, this is great.
Yeah, and now that you're like sober, you're like, what was I even thinking?
Yeah, it's just this like cheapened version of me. Once again, I don't feel this way about other people, but so I played D&D, or I did. Our group fell into that tragic, everybody got busy, the DM got a new job, but somebody that is a very sweet friend of mine, we started hanging out outside of D&D, and I was referencing something, some book or some poem or something. They're like, I didn't know you had this element to you. They just said something, I didn't know you were like this, and I sort of I pressed what they meant. I think they just meant like I didn't just party, because like we would drink during D&D, like half our crew drank, half didn't sometimes. So it's like this drinking persona that was just this like really surface level version of me was started just coming out like all the time.
Well, it's such a long thing. For those who don't know what D&D is, it's Dungeons and
Uh,
Dragons.
oh
And
yeah, so
sometimes it can go on for what, like 8 hours?
8 hours every fucking week, 8 hours every Saturday, and we would usually meet before like hour before, and then actually, well, we were all of us are queer, so everybody was late. But like, but, and then we would hang out afterwards too. But so honestly, that person's comment was one of those things. It's like I consider it like all these little things, all these experiences, and are like drops in the bucket that like when the bucket's filled up, we're strong enough to like make a new choice. And that's what I think of hams and like harm reduction. Like every single little thing that you do that is a step in the right direction. It literally all matters and it all adds up. It was so I could have maybe been offended by that person's comment. Basically, they're basically saying, I didn't know you're smart. Or like I didn't know you had thoughtful commentary about shit. I thought you were just like like drinking all the time. I thought you were just like an alcoholic cleric. So, um it was like it just made me realize like, man, I miss me. I miss the more thoughtful, slower um parts of me that like takes time to flesh out like a nuanced thought to other people. Something that's hard about knowing people since having people who've known you since you were 6. Like I'll make flippant comments and not fully explain what I mean, and I'm like, oh damn, that person doesn't have all my content. They don't know my lore.
Yeah.
Don't have all the context, and so it just made me really real. And like drinking me would just say flippant shit all the time, you know. And I'm just like, I don't co-sign that person and their behavior. That's me, you know. I don't excuse it. And I realize that like my brain is very fast and I've had to relearn how to navigate it.
Yeah,
But
I always say that my brain is like a 5-lane highway that's going 60
Mhm.
miles per hour all at the same time. Like that's the way I
Yeah,
explain because like I talk fast, but I think even faster.
exactly. Yeah, no, I completely relate. And thank you for being so patient with just like our back and forth. I have always worked on struggling not to talk over people or interrupt, but I'm like, I'm just so excited. It's not, but then I'll leave conversations being like, oh my God, I wanted to know what I know what the fuck I have to say. I want to know what you have to say.
Yeah. I'm
But
so used to doing it and doing
yeah,
this way where I can kind of bring it back into what we were talking about and kind
yes,
of circle back.
yes,
I'm
I
used
have,
to going on rants and
yeah,
whatever. Like I've told the same story sometimes 10 times. So if you've listened to my show, you're like, "Oh, I know this about you
yeah.
by now because you've told this story so many times."
Yeah, no, and I one of my favorite like compliments is people are like, you're so good at like circling back around. I can never remember where I started. And I think that's due to a couple things. Like in part not drinking, it's definitely improved my memory just all the time. But also being around quiet people and you know, excited people, it's like we gravitate towards one another. And you know, hearing more quiet people's plights of just getting steamrolled in conversations has helped me really try to be mindful and be like, shut the fuck up, Megan was talking, just shut it, we've been talking for like 20 minutes straight, Jesus. So I've been really trying, you know, try to be good about circling stuff back around too. But just yeah, I mean, having comments like that made like where it's, I'm glad that I can surprise people with more, you know, maybe depth than they initially perceived. But I was like, man, I wanna get back to that. And it is wild how not drinking, not everybody's gonna be like this, because I still go to parties and I still go do the things that I normally do. I just bring my all of my little special beverage, like my NA beverages. We have a sober bar here that just popped up.
Oh,
That,
really?
yeah, and I'm not really a big like NA beer person, or like there's like Kentucky 74 whiskey has a fake whiskey that tastes like the bottom of a rocks whiskey and rocks, if you've never had
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, my name's JD, so like Jack
right?
Daniels was my
No,
drink for.
no, I meant like if you've ever had the NA one. You
No, I
mentioned
have not.
earlier. I was a whiskey guy also. I love my whiskey gingers, man. So good. But I also like the fake whiskey and ginger beer with just a ton of bitters. Um, I'm not necessarily looking for things to taste like alcohol. It doesn't trigger me. It doesn't bring up bad feelings, but I almost like it when things are just good in their own right. Um, but yeah, it's just it's nice to it's interesting how you like, oh, I do kind of want to go to that book signing event. Like I've gone to
That's such
things
an
where
Oregon thing to say. That right?
it's not a queer bar too. Like this is okay, it gets more Oregon. It's the person who wrote The Ethical Slut, which if you don't know is I actually haven't read that book, but it's sort of like a intro to polyamory. So the author who wrote that book was doing a book reading at a bar called Spectrum. I knocked over a glass. It was really embarrassing. I'm like, God damn it, I'm not even drunk. I'm still breaking shit. What's so funny is I think if I was drunk, I wouldn't have done it because I was always so careful to be like really okay.
not
And some
not the
get,
falling over drunk.
huh?
You didn't want to be the drunk where you're like falling
Exactly.
over and making a
Yeah.
mess.
So I was way more. I'm not to say that I was never just like a mess and sloppy, but sometimes if I knew I'd gotten like too drunk, I would like clean my room, make a meal, and prep the next day's like food because I wanted to take care of future me because I knew I was gonna be fucking tired. So
See, that's funny because I always talk about future me, but I didn't give a shit about future me.
I said he
Like
can do that.
that was future me's problem. Like
Exactly.
I would buy
Like
pills
your
and be
JD
like, I
navigate.
need to save these pills for tomorrow
Yeah.
when I'm sick again. And then by the end of the night, I do all the pills because I'm
Yeah.
like, that's future JD will figure that shit out when he needs to.
You know who's gonna be able to figure this out? Future JD. He's got
Future
this.
JD, he'll figure it
He's
out. I have
fucking.
no problem in that.
You know he'll know what to do. Not me. I know these are. That's good stuff. But like it's been mostly cool too. I'm very grateful and lucky that most of the friends, like all of really the friends that I had and kept in my life aren't like bar friends, you know, so I didn't get that. Some people get that just bout of just like where is everybody? Um so that was really cool. Our D&D crew, when we stopped actually playing, we started going on little adventures. Like we would go camping together. I called it LARPing, and they're like, you can't just call everything LARPing, Kate. Like we're just going on a hike. This isn't. But
So, LARPing is big around where I used to live. Like when I lived in central PA, like now I live in north central PA, but when I was in true central PA, I lived 10 minutes, no, not even 10 minutes, I would say 6 minutes from a Renaissance fair that
no, I
was open
been
for like 4 months a year.
4 months.
Well,
You
because
could
it gets
go.
it was only open during the summer and the fall.
Okay.
And every like weekend there'd be like hundreds of cars in their parking lot. And I used to live behind a Renaissance fair in
Oh,
Massachusetts.
that's
So I could hear the LARPing going on. And I never experienced it until I was like 20
Lord.
something.
What is
For those who don't know, LARPing is live action role playing and it's hilarious.
yeah. I will say I've never really witnessed it. I haven't gone to a Ren fair. We have a fair here that's popular. It's called the Oregon Country Fair. It's not the county fair. There are no Ferris wheels here. It's like very lovingly referred to as the hippie fest or all different kinds of things throughout the years. It's this so there are these structures built into the woods that are kind of there all the time. And they just do it during the summer. It is a magical place. It used to be a lot more like maybe drug heavy, naked people heavy, but now it's just like vendors. It's sort of Ren Fairy, but with more fairies. So woodsy Oregon stuff. But yeah, I feel very
I love
Oregon
Oregon. That's
now.
such I need to I've always wanted to visit Oregon and Washington and hit like the PNW or the Pacific Northwest, yeah.
Yep,
PNW.
yep.
And I have friends from both states. I just haven't made it out there yet, but it is a goal of mine to go. I love Eugene. I think it's such a cool city.
Nice. So have
And
you kind of like heard enough about it?
yeah, my one of my really good friends that I made in rehab, he's been on my show a few months ago, and he grew up in Portland,
Oh, nice. I've
like
barely been.
the suburb of Portland,
Yeah.
like outside.
Anybody who doesn't want to just be totally broke lives in like what Beaverton or just some suburb of Portland. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
What?
Well, thank you again, Kate, for coming
Yeah.
on and talking and being so open about your story because you're definitely not alone. And I like having people on that have such different backgrounds because I want somebody to be watching going, oh my God, I'm not alone because Kate said this and now I feel this way.
Yeah.
So it's
And
important for me to find people all over the place. I'm in so many different groups for recovery on Facebook because I want to find the different people that have different stories so that I can also help you relate and make you feel better that you're not alone.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and that's why, I've kind of backed off. I don't want to like irritate people with just because I talk, as you see, but that what was so huge is other people being open about what they were going through, and I kind of just want to do that for somebody else. Like
I
I
feel
would,
like you would thrive in the rooms like AA. I feel like you would like meet a clique of people who are also sober.
the way
And
that basically, I mean, she said in a very offhanded way, but it's like kind of like asked me to be their sponsor basically, or they're like, I'm gonna like kind of treat you in this way, and I was like, oh my god, I was like, I felt like somebody asked me to go steady.
that's
I
what
would,
I mean.
yeah, I would like to. I mean, I would like to go to a meeting. I think initially I wanted to be very baby soft with myself. I wanted to surround myself with like lots of grace. I really like went into it pretty prepared. Like I just swapped out, alcohol. All the money I would spend on it, I got treats. I have a whole stash over here. It's just like I have a treat shelf. I have a pretty big room for having so many roommates, but and I was wondering about taking in other people's difficult stories. While that's what I want to do with my whole life. Like if I could get on the track to be a counselor again, like I was going to school for initially, um, that's I just wanted to kind of make sure I was strong enough to be
You
around
seem like
maybe.
such an academic person where like you cared about academics.
I liked it. I like learning. Always student. There are parts of academia that are really pretentious that I don't and aren't like inviting to people, and I don't love that. Just like hams is so great because it's not like it's more open than AA. And I think that there's AA is like fantastic for people and I'm glad it's there. But I love hams in the way that it's like, you know, we aren't going to shame you for any mode that you take to sobriety. It's such a more holistic approach to recovery. So
And there's people that are on there for the wrong reasons, but usually Ken figures that person out and bans them from the group early. Ken's awesome. He was on my
yeah,
show
I know
early.
I want to listen to his episode, but like I said, it kind of backed off. I wanted to wait, so I didn't. I was so nervous because we had a big waiting period before I was on your show, and I was like, just trying not to think about it because I was like, fuck, what am I gonna say?
Oh my God. Last week I interviewed like 20 people.
Whew,
I was
man,
I was it was a staycation for me from work. I took a vacation, but I wasn't going anywhere.
yeah.
So I figured the only place I was going was like doctor's appointments for me or my wife.
Hmm.
So I kind of built my entire week around our appointments and interviewed a
Yeah,
lot of people in that time period
that's a
from
lot of
all over the
editing.
country. Even I think you're my third one from Hams this time
Okay,
around.
nice.
One was in Sweden, and which I was excited to talk to somebody.
Oh
Like I've had
yeah.
England, I've had Scotland, I've had Australia a couple times.
Oh my
So
gosh, I would
I'd
love
like
to
to
hear
get
about all the
people
different
from.
cultures
That's
and
what
like
I'm.
drinking cultures in different cultures.
Yep.
Hold on,
So,
my little buddy's going crazy. Like my bearded dragons are like cats that went in and out, in and out. I wish I didn't mess around with the settings enough before I got it. I know I'll let you go because this is probably like a very long episode. I didn't look how long.
no, it's about average. There's
Oh
some that
yeah? How
2
long?
hours.
2 hours? Nice. Okay. Hey, when I
Ken and I talked for 2 hours,
oh
and
nice. He
it
was a
was
long
all about
guest.
harm reduction and him telling his story and talking about how he got into hams, why he got into hams. He oh my
The
God, what's his
founder.
name?
That's him, right?
What?
He is the founder, right? Like that's
Yeah,
him. Yeah,
yeah, he
cool.
wrote the book on hams back in like 2009, I think it was. What's his
That's
name?
oh, this is Zoe. She was already named when I got her.
That
And I
was my
looked into
dog's, well, that is my dog's name.
nice. She's my little buddy. She is about 6 or 7 years old now. So
Oh my
I
God.
walk.
For those
She's
who are listening, she's holding a bearded dragon named Zoe.
I forgot there's just gonna be some listening people. But and I worried about being a little bit long-winded, but I was like, when I'm listening to a podcast at work, I want that thing to be as long as possible because I like,
I
I
just
want
don't like to shorten it. Like I've had
yeah.
people only talk for a half hour,
Ooh,
but and that's what it is. I'm not gonna like push and pry if you're not willing to talk about things. You know what I mean? I want you to be comfortable being on here, so I don't want to like ever push somebody into a topic. If I
yeah.
can, I've noticed that I'm pretty good at feeling that vibe
Yeah.
To either push on the gas or let off the gas,
Or
depending
you
on.
just skip over something. You're like, okay, they're wanting to like focus on something else. But I think I worry about only seeming like I only focus on the positive, and I think it's just because I am so euphoric, like I am so excited about this. I try to not like proselytize. I don't talk to people about not drinking because I honestly don't want to feel weird about it, and I don't want them to feel weird about it. Um, but if people bring it up, oh, that is something that is probably one of the things I wanted to say. I didn't come on here with like an agenda or anything, but so my mom's 73, right? She has been drinking her entire life. She brought up to me the other day when I was at work, so it was a really quick call. She just kind of mentioned offhandedly, like, I'm so tired of this, like, I want to stop. And I was like, huh, literally never heard her say that. And just to kind of give some background, like, we didn't used to be that open. We did not talk about the drinking. I don't know how all of us understood, but it was intrinsically understood you don't talk about that. And I gently brought it back around again this last time she and I talked. I talked about what is it called, the Sinclair method,
Yeah.
because my mom said I can't stop drinking, and I was like, that's understandable. The only reason I'm like, please no, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because the other day you're mentioning stopping smoking and you mentioned stopping drinking, and I was like, that's obviously exciting to me because of what I'm doing right now. And I let her know a little bit about the Sinclair method and about how people who are in their 50s and 60s have successfully moderated or stopped. Because, I don't want to share too much of her business, but she is drinking all day, every day. And so in her mind, maybe not every single day, but is probably among the people who's chemically dependent, right? So it probably feels insurmountable to her. But she has no idea that like this whole community is out here. And so I kind of let her know about some resources, and she sounded hopeful. And we started talking about her drinking when I was younger, because we were talking about a sibling of mine who doesn't talk to either of us, because we had a harder childhood, right? And then she was like, oh yeah, so and so, and she always just did this, and it was for doesn't talk to me just for no reason. And I was like, well, wasn't though, wasn't no reason. And I said it in just the most ginger way possible. Like, I was like, growing up with the drinking, it was a little hard to emotionally connect sometimes. And then she luckily, and I didn't know how that was going to go. I didn't know how she was going to respond. But she luckily took it and she's like, oh, yeah, and just admitted it. Amazing. Like, if anybody is out there who has like had, and I'm not saying, oh, always reconnect with your parents, the onus is on you. I'm just saying that over the years of letting my mom know that I'm like a safe person to talk to, also taking some, you know, words that I shouldn't have had directed at me by a parent, whatever, it's possible to turn that shit around. I could never have imagined we were talking openly about my mom's drinking and her apologizing for things, for anything. And like, that's so incredible. And she thanked me so much for being somebody she could talk to about this because she just hadn't had a lot of friends. She lived a really isolated life. So like not only to know that reconnecting with your parents and talking about, I think like people call it like healing generational trauma, but like also if you're somebody who's in, you know, 40s, 50s, 60s and you've been drinking for your entire life, it's incredibly possible to like it's never too late to like think about stopping. So like that blew me away. Like I was very weepy like when I got off that call. Like holy, and it's so cool. Like the what do they call it? Social contagion. People around me I've noticed, and my mom even like just by not talking or shaming, not like any that, just you don't even have to talk about it, but just by kind of like living the way you do, people start to like think about it for themselves.
No, and it's completely true. You make it contagious to where people actually want to open up to you. They feel comfortable opening up to you. When I've noticed that doing this show, I've been doing this show for 4 years in July, or 3 years in July. Either way, it's been a while. And I've noticed people reach out to me, usually privately inside of like Facebook Messenger, or if they have my number, they'll text me. And even like when my dad passed away back in June, I had we were at the viewing and I had a guy coming around that my dad was good friends with, but I also grew up with his son. And he came around. He goes, "Hey, I heard blah 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 was talking about your podcast and how you do your podcast. That's really cool." And the person, his son, is still in addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I'm like, okay, so he's paying attention to this, even though he's still in addiction. So obviously, I'm reaching the right kind of people.
Taking in that content, like, don't be hard on yourself. It like that's what I think is just best to not be hard on yourself and beat yourself up. Just if anything, like all of the shitty experiences, the time where I was like really kicking myself and pissed off at myself, made me strong enough and like fueled me to make this decision. So it's hard. Some people are kind of like in more like emergent situations where they maybe should medically stop more quickly. But if you're not in that scenario, like being hard on yourself is only like feeling any kind of shame. There's some amount of shame and guilt that can kind of propel you to make a different choice. But if you're not there yet and if you're just kicking yourself, it's just going to make it harder to like be strong enough to make a different choice. So like I was super like while being honest and holding myself accountable, I was just really soft with myself. So like on days that I was hungover, I would try to not call anybody or make decisions because I knew that my brain wasn't like in tip top shape. Kind of like that. I think I recently saw some sort of Instagram or TikTok or something. I see TikToks only on Instagram because I'm a millennial. I don't.
They're the same thing.
They're the same thing. Somebody was like, yeah, after 10:30, I just like I don't listen to my brain's like thoughts about my own life. You know, you'll start to think like, oh, my life's like shitty or something. You look at the clock, you're like, oh, it's 10:31. Can't fucking fool me. I'm going to bed. So yeah.
TikTok has a huge community, a recovery community.
I bet. Yeah.
I have found countless guests on TikTok where people they're just telling their story through TikToks and healing through TikTok.
Yeah.
So like I used to laugh at TikTok and think that it was funny.
Yeah.
And then like I started doing this show and you know how the algorithm works. So all of a sudden TikTok's like, here, you're gonna like these videos and
here's the silver content.
Yeah, and of course I did.
Yeah, you pause for 4 seconds on something. It's like, well, this is what you're getting now.
You commented on this, you're gonna like 100 of these videos.
Exactly. You whispered this to your friend in the same room as you. Here you go.
Here you go. It's worse if you type it in a text message. They're on top of that shit.
I know. Ugh. Oh, I have to. My bearded dragon hopped onto the floor, and the other one, he does not. He's a very territorial gentleman, and he does the head bobbing. He does not like it. Oh, I don't know if I can. I can't. I'm not gonna try. Okay. Anyways, I'll let you go. I don't want this to be too long.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate you coming on and being so open about your story. I know it's not ever easy to like run back the clock like that, but I find it important. It's the same reason I find therapy important. This is like it's like a big therapy session doing these episodes.
Yeah.
So,
I hope that like rest up afterwards because it seems like it would just, it'd just be a little like not tiring in a bad way, but it just, yeah.
It's mentally exhausting sometimes.
It probably depends on the stories, but yeah, I never mind. I'm always grateful that like could possibly help somebody else, like other people's stories helped me. So
awesome. Thank you again.
have a good night.
You too.